everybody, and welcome back to Cast Album Chat with Tyler. My last video was a little long. There were a lot of details about what could be coming up possibly from productions that have just recently closed, just recently opened, or are about to open. But I thought I would take a little bit of, I would deviate a little bit and do something a little bit silly today. It's something that's been on my mind from some of my last few videos. I not only talk about the recording itself, but I also talk about the packaging and the cover, and some of them are really great and some of them are not so great. So today we're going to break it down, and I'm going to tell you my top 10 worst album covers. Just a little bit of an intro before we get started. I first of all want to say I cheated a little bit because I was going through all of my albums, both on my computer, my vinyls, my CDs, just to see, what could make this list. I decided to do a top 10, but I did cheat a little bit by choosing maybe... One second, my cat knocked something over. And we're back, and I have the little culprit right here. Huh? My little devil. Well, anyway, I decided to cheat just a little bit because I decided to go by show. There were some shows that kind of had a propensity to have bad covers. So I kind of put them all together. I have spoken about a couple of these before, so that's another cheat. But I also wanted to preface this by saying that I never want to put down anyone's talent as far as graphic design, photography is concerned, anyone's physical appearance, definitely not. There were some interesting styling choices that were made sometimes, but I don't want anyone to get confused about what this is. This is lighthearted. These album covers make me laugh or kind of turn my head a little bit every once in a while. So let's get started on the list. So the cat has been freed, and now I am free to talk some trash about these album covers. I went in alphabetical order, and today we're going to start with Annie from Lisbon, 1983. You'll notice I don't have my screen on back here behind me. Usually I turn it on so there's just not a void here, but I'm looking at my computer screen, which is connected to this as well, and I don't want to give this away until I talk about them, but I do have to refer to them. So if I'm looking a little bit behind the camera, that's why I've got to look at these images. So going back to Annie, Lisbon, 1983. First of all, gotta say, I'm so happy that this was recorded because we have so few cast recordings out of Portugal. It's, not the best recording of the show, certainly not the worst either, but I do like these shows that came out in the first few years. I've spoken about that in other videos, about how there are certain shows that kind of seem to lose their essence as time goes on. I think Hair is certainly one of those. I don't like very many modern cast recordings of Hair. And I think Annie is just such an interesting show, about its time that it takes place, and the sound from the late 70s of Broadway. So I do like this recording, and I do listen to it a lot, simply because of that. That being said, I don't even know what this album cover is. It is kind of a black background, as you can see. And we have a little Annie, who I guess doesn't have to be a redhead, but she's maybe got some red in her hair from that light, but I can't really tell. And then it looks like she's just talking to a giant fur ball. Then we have a blue thing in the foreground, and something, I don't know what it is. It looks like it's in the shape of a shovel in the background. I mean, somebody just showed up at rehearsals for the show, took a picture of this actress. I don't know which one it is. There are two Annies that are credited on this album, and it's one of those shows where they decided, especially with children, not to give credit to one or the other, so you just get to guess. So if anyone from Portugal, or if there's a fan of musical theater from Portugal that knows which Annie this is, that would be great. That being said, this is the kind of the top of the list, starting at A with the worst album covers. Very confusing, with a fur ball. On this next one, as I said, I'm just giving them away for free. This is a 3 for 1. And these are cast recordings of Cabaret. I've spoken about 2 of these before. I think one of them I've spoken about in 2 separate videos because I think it is so bad. That would be the 1990, technically the 1991 cast recording of the Budapest production of Cabaret. The show opened in 1991, I think way late in December, was recorded in 1992, but I have it in my library as 1991 because that's when the show premiered. It does not tell you much about the show at all. It actually looks like, if you're a horror fan, much like I am, it looks like the opening credits to Friday the 13th Part 3 in 3D, you know, when the credits are coming at you. It's exactly that. Doesn't really tell you anything about the show. Only thing I could do about this is that, you know, I have to scan these records into my computer so that when I digitalize them, I can listen to them and I have a nice looking cover. I did what I could. So, you know, I did scan in what I could and I made the background more uniform. I don't know if I have any shots of the before. I'll probably try to put up a before there. Did what I could, but it is still one of the ugliest covers that I have ever seen for a cast recording. The recording itself is actually pretty great. I think something that I do want to talk about in this video is, you know, can we judge a recording by its cover? The orchestra, this was during a time that even if you had the instrumentalists, a lot of music directors were moving towards synth. So we get a lot of like synth tuba and stuff like that. And doesn't really go with the show, or the time period for that matter. So if you can find this one, I really enjoy it. I think that Julie Bausti as Sally is fantastic, but this album cover has got to go. The other one that I have spoken about with Cabaret is the 2005 Reykjavik cast recording. This one's just weird. It has the elements. It has kind of what it needs. But if you don't know anything about Cabaret, you might be able to infer something by this font, but it's not the font that bothers me, it's the texture. And the really interesting thing, let me see if I can actually pull it up from here. Where are my C's, 2000, here we are. You would think that it had some kind of texture to it because it looks like it was taken from like a t-shirt that they made for the cast, but there's no texture to this. You can see this is just shiny, shiny, shiny. And looking at it from far away, you know, it could just be school production, you know, their version of the logo of Cabaret, but man, is it bad, bad, bad. Again, you know, I don't know that we can necessarily judge the recording by the cover. This one kind of falls in the middle for me, as I talked about in another video about Icelandic cast recordings. You can tell that, especially the MC, who I've enjoyed on other recordings, has heard the 1998 Broadway revival recording, and a lot of his phrasing is very similar, and I think the same thing about Eddie Redmayne and the new London recording, so he's not the only one. I think a lot of people kind of fell into that trap, just thinking that some of these, some of the text that's in the opening number of Willkommen is to a specific rhythm, and it is not. So that's kind of interesting. Fräulein Schneider, I was kind of hoping a little bit more from her because I believe she played Sally in an earlier production. Just doesn't give me the oomph that I really want from the role. But if you could find it, certainly. I think I found one copy. I've got 2. I found one on Discogs in okay shape, and then I found a new unopened copy on eBay randomly. So see if you can look for it by this title right here with the K and 2 T's. But yeah, this is one of the worst album covers I've ever seen. And then wrapping up Cabaret, I would say that the 1970 Vienna production, the recording there, does not look so great. There are a couple of covers here, but I went back to the original one, which was on the original vinyl, and then later on the CD that was put out by Pricer Records. It is kind of similar to the Budapest cast recording. It's at least it has little lights on there, so you can get an idea that maybe it's about something in show business, although that's not what the show is really about. But it's this really weird purple color that only existed in 1970. That being said, don't let this cover fool you. This is one of the best recordings of Cabaret We get our first female MC with Blanche Aubry. Violetta Ferrari sounds like she's drunk through the whole thing, which is great. And you get a lot of the older numbers that have later been excised from the show. So you have Misguide, the telephone song, and a gigantic orchestra, which sounds like it's not very much in keeping with the show as we think of it nowadays, but it was written that way. In the original recordings, Broadway, London, you can hear the strings in the background and the large ensemble. It is almost an operatic ensemble. So if you want to hear Cabaret on Crack, this is the one to go to, and I listened to this recording a lot, so don't let the cover fool you. And next up, we have Evita, the 1986 Budapest cast recording. Sorry, Hungary, but you're kind of striking out a little bit here. Most Evita cast recordings have the famous logo on it. I don't know who designed that one actually, but I just think it's so striking and evocative, and is used in a lot of recordings of the show. Not only from, I don't want to say the very beginning, because the original concept album, which I have to say has kind of a boring cover, not bad, just boring, just says Evita on the front of it and has a little bit of text on a white background. But I like the original logo, and it has been used all the way up to this last Broadway revival. I know when I saw it in Spain a little bit later, it was used there as well, and has continued to be used to this very day. This cover decided that they were going to use a kind of a frilly white background, a la catalogs from the 1980s, showing jewelry, and I don't know what it is. And there is a gun holster and a rose. And once again, the colors that are in these things. This pink on this rose is a pink that only existed in 1986. Can't find it anymore. And this was not the logo for this production. Interestingly enough, I found programs online. I think the show started in 1980. It was produced by the Rock-Színház, or the Rock Theater of Budapest. And I think it opened in 1980. This is from 1986, so it was in their rep for a very long amount of time. They decided to record it. I'm glad they did. The cast is pretty solid. And the interesting thing is that it takes a lot of inspiration from the original concept album from 1976, 10 years earlier. So you get that more rock feel. The Eva has a much rougher voice. It's maybe not as vibrato heavy as some of the Evas that we're used to. But this cover does not match with the recording itself. I can't make heads or tails of it. Luckily on the back, we do have a picture of both Eva and Che that is obvious. I would think it's a publicity photo. I'm hoping it is. But it's also strikes me as a little bit strange, just their body language towards each other. So, if you want to find this one, it pops up quite frequently on eBay, Discogs, and it is available digitally. So you can definitely find this and kind of give it a good comparison, listen to the original concept recording. This is just a highlights version, but you'll hear a lot of similarities between those two recordings. And do not think that the United States is not going to show up on this list. We are not immune to bad design, and especially in some high-profile productions. This next cover is from a recording that I do really like, and it seemed like a perfect match between actor, singer, and role. And it's the 2008 Broadway revival recording of Gypsy. What in the holy clip art is this mess? I've seen clip art used many times in covers, and I don't really remember what the actual logo was, but we were coming off of just a few years earlier. We had the Bernadette Peters revival, and there was the title that was spelled out in different, like a boa and a drum, and things that made you think of Gypsy and the production. This one, it's just kind of computer-generated light bulbs with the name Patti LuPone, just as big as Gypsy. And I know I'll be eating my words when Audra's recording of Gypsy comes out, because what we've seen so far is Audra, Gypsy. I know that the actress now is just as important as the role, but there's nothing else on the front of it. It just says 2008 Broadway cast recording, and then we have Patti up front. And listen, the reason I feel strong enough to do this video is because I can criticize myself. I know that my Photoshop and editing skills are not the best. I just like to talk about cast recordings and apparently their covers. But this looks like what they did what I do. I take a picture of myself and then I go into my little computer and I say remove background, and it removes what it wants to remove. You know, sometimes they're just like little pieces of like a CD cover in the background or the chair under my arm, and I have to like cut it out and splice it. They did Patty wrong on this one. They did that. They took a picture of her and then they decided they were going to cut it out and just pop it right on there. So, you know, this one is kind of offensively ugly, just because it doesn't make me want to listen to the recording. And again, like I said, this is something that, it was just a match made in heaven. It was Patti LuPone and Gypsy. How could this go wrong? It didn't go wrong. You know, from all accounts, she was great. We got some great legendary stories, like the photographer towards the end of the run when she went off on the photographer. So, you know, this is a great recording that I believe had some really great bonus tracks on it. Honestly, I don't listen to this one as much just because, you know, I like to go for the weird ones. So I'll generally turn on probably the South African recording with Livy Morris. But I don't know, this one, it hurts when I look at it. So I wish they'd come up with something better, and I'm hoping that the Audra album does come up with something better. So this next one is one that I'm sure not a lot of people have. I certainly don't have it, but I do have the scans of the cover, both front and back. I almost didn't add it on the list because this is not from a large production. So I don't ever want to talk trash about you know, a small production that came up with their own logo. But I felt like I could kind of do that because, little time machine here, I, many moons ago, directed a production of The Fantastics in my university town. And, you know, I wore many hats and I decided that I was going to make the logo. And this is what I came up with. So I feel like I'm fully qualified to really kind of tear this down, because if you can't laugh at yourself, how are you going to laugh at somebody else? So anyway, the next recording is the, what year is this? 1994 Maastricht recording of Hello Dolly. If you don't know where Maastricht is, it is in the Netherlands. Something that's really interesting about this recording is that it was done by, I believe it was an opera company, although the Dolly, Marietta Janssens, is not terribly operatic from what I remember. I've heard it before. But it is done in the Limburgish, I believe. I'm kind of looking here, my eyesight is not what it used to be, and I got this light in my face. But the Limburgish dialect. So I think it kind of goes back and forth between, I think there's some songs in English and some in the Limburgish dialect. We don't hear this very often, you know. I would love to do a video on kind of minority languages and dialects being used in cast albums. Gotta write that one down next. I got a running list now. So I really can't talk about the quality since I haven't heard it in a long time, but this cover is just so clip art in a way, and it's not just that it's clip art. Okay, we have the American flag in the background, a brown splotch on it so that you can actually read the text of Hello Dolly, which is also clip art in gray and yellow. And then we have 6 random stars in front. I don't know what that could possibly stand for, other than the fact I'm looking at the back cover, there are 6 stars that are credited in the show. Maybe that's what they were pointing at. And then just some text down at the bottom. I don't know. It's just an assault on the eyes. The colors don't go well together. You know, I know it is a very American musical, but I feel like they could have chosen something a little bit more emblematic of the show than this. Also on the back cover, I'm really bad with flags, which is ironic because I compared this show to Flags with Sheldon from Big Bang Theory. But it looks like the Dutch flag. I don't know exactly what order the colors go in. It's also red, white, and blue. And maybe it's not in the right order. I will correct myself down below if I have done the wrong reading of this flag. But it's just very American, very Dutch. sung in a dialect of Dutch, and it doesn't really stick out to me very much as far as Hello Dolly recordings are concerned. It's not really great, not really bad. Just kind of falls in the middle, which makes it a little bit more forgettable, especially when you have so many recordings of a show like Hello Dolly. So if you could find this one, definitely look for it. It would probably most likely show up on Discogs, but possibly on eBay as well. Moving right along to our next bad cover. This one's not so offensive, I don't think, but it definitely needed to be added onto the list. I think there might have been some kind of time travel concern here, because I know this is the original, or one of the original covers, but it looks like they used clip art on it. This is the 1972 Sao Paulo recording of Jesus Christ Superstar, Jesus Cristo Superstar. I don't know how they got something that looked like clip art on there before clip art existed. I don't think clip art was anything in 1972. I'm sure there were some like books that you could literally clip things out and slam it on something, take a picture, or take a picture. You couldn't scan anything in 1972, I don't think. But this tells me nothing about the show, and I don't even know what this little clip art person is down in the corner. Looks like he's kind of like shushing someone. He's got a shadow behind him. There are bell bottoms. That's really the only thing that I can tell about this little clip art man. So this is the original cover. I don't have it on vinyl. Luckily, it was released on CD a few times. It was released in a pack of music that was, I'm trying to think exactly what it was. The translator, who's also a famous playwright, had a pack of music that he had worked on, most of it non-musical, but this was included in it. Don't know where I was going with that, but I think this cover was included on, this cover was not included on that one actually. The next CD, the most recent release, has this cover, which is the original cover, I believe. The one from that pack uses a different cover, which I believe was also available on vinyl, but I don't know, since I haven't been able to find it. But when I found that cover online, let me tell you, it didn't get any better. That cover tells you nothing about this production. Luckily, I found some photos online of the production, and it looks pretty standard as far as I can tell. But neither this cover nor the back cover, which is really just, it has a little small reproduction of the front cover on it with the song titles. And then the other cover with the flowers. Neither one of them really tells you much about Jesus Christ Superstar, and specifically about this production of Jesus Christ Superstar. So props for the time travel to get the clip art to put it on the front in 1972. It's really all I could say. Recording's not bad, it's just a highlight, so you don't really get very much. If I remember correctly, I think the only thing that really stands out about this one is that Pilate's Dream is sung by Pilate's wife. Who sometimes shows up in other productions, but she never sings. She doesn't have anything to do. If she weren't there, you would never know. Sorry to all the actresses that have ever played Pilate's wife, but that's really the only thing that sticks out in my mind about this recording. So if you can find it, it's a little tricky to find. Might be more than you want to spend on it, so don't throw a lot of money at it. But if you can find it for $20, 20 euros, around there, or lower, go ahead and snatch it. All right, I'm giving 2 away for free, 2 for 1 on this one. Again, this might be my last, no, it's not my last one, sorry. So the next one that I have is a twofer of My Fair Lady recordings. The first one is the 1969 Vienna production. You know, we got another Viennese production around the same time, and actually this probably came the season right before Cabaret at the Theater an der Wien in Vienna, Austria. This one is, I would say, just kind of offensive just because of how dated it is. I think there are certain things that you can add that make a production of its time without making it look so terrible later. The one that kind of sticks out in my head that I saw when I was looking for weird covers or bad covers or great covers, as in one of my next videos, 1776, the Broadway revival. I thought it was really cool that they use the eagle again. You know, of course, it's all very American, but it has those little glasses that have, I believe it's a reflection of the American flag on it. And those little lens glasses were kind of coming back in fashion during that time in the late 90s. But I look at it and I don't think, right now anyways, I mean, it's been 20 something years later, almost 30. Oh, gosh, I'm getting old. You know, and it doesn't strike me as being too dated. This one from 1969 from Vienna, just those flowers. I mean, you know, this was the time of flower power, and these are definitely flower power flowers. And that pink and that grayish brown, and really not having anything else on it doesn't do it any favors. I do have the vinyl and the CD of this. This is another Preiser recording, or Preiser, I guess as they would pronounce it, or Preiser if we're talking about Austrians or Viennese people. It's not my favorite cover of the show, and strangely enough, it's one of those things that I think it's so ugly that I'm kind of going back around and liking it for the wrong reasons, I think. But you know, if I were to direct a production of My Fair Lady, I certainly wouldn't want this specific logo being my logo. So the next recording of My Fair Lady that it was an assault on my eyes was the 1976, I believe. Yeah, 1976 Lima cast recording of My Fair Lady, obviously, called Mi Muñeca Favorita, so my favorite doll. This is from Peru. I don't really know where to start with this. Obviously, this is just a photo of the two leads here in very modern clothing, I guess I would say. I don't know. You know, it has Regina Alcover and Osvaldo Catone, who sometimes spells his name with a W, sometimes spells it with a V. Don't know which one is real. I think I go with I don't know which one I go with because I have to keep it all uniform if I'm searching for his name in my music app. So I think I use the W. I can't remember. But anyway, I don't know what is happening with this picture. They're on like a wagon wheel. He's kind of awkwardly holding her arm, kind of midway down her forearm. And I think the back cover, there's maybe a picture of the whole ensemble, kind of with a lot of flowers around, but it's not a very high quality photo either. You've probably seen a few, if you've seen this cover online, it's not really great quality because they also use strange fonts. That Mi Muñeca Favorita at the very top is in a blue that is not super legible. And then on the side, they have this font of their two names that don't center. I know, Kat, I'm coming. They don't center very well when the names are written vertically. So the letters look like they're kind of offset from each other. I had to kind of clean this one up whenever I scanned it in. It's still a weird shape for me to get it all in one, so I don't think that my cover even looks that great, but there's really only so much you could do with a bad cover. Talking about these two recordings, going back to the Vienna recording, it's really great. Of course, you get the big orchestra from Vienna, like only Vienna does. Johannes Fehring was the music director, and he, they have always had great music directors in Vienna. Johannes Fehring did this recording and Cabaret, and it sounds spectacular. It gets a little bit of a ding because the full overture is not there on this recording. It's called Vorspiel, so it's like playing before, like what's played before, but there's a word for overture in German, which is just kind of, I guess, the French word, Germanicized, I guess. But it starts as the overture and then it goes into the Embassy Waltz, which the Embassy Waltz is not on this recording later on. So it's cool to hear both of them, but it's kind of like a mishmash and it gets a little, it's too much. And I don't think that transition from one to the other plays very well. Gabriele Jacobi, who plays Eliza here, she's not the strongest voice I've heard, but I kind of was on a My Fair Lady kick not too long ago, and her voice is kind of in the middle as far as where they sit, but she's certainly not the worst, but she's very spirited, so she gets points for that one. Josef Meinrad, who was Don Quixote in the Austrian production of Man of La Mancha, Der Mann von La Mancha, is also really great, fantastic diction, and it's really cool to hear this Cockney in the kind of like lower class Viennese dialect. So if you can find that one, definitely find it. It is available quite frequently online. Check it out at Discogs. And then the Peruvian recording, it's special. I would say that Regina Alcover does not really have the voice for the role. She later played Maria in Sound of Music, which was not called either Sonrisas y Lágrimas, Smiles and Tears, as it is in Spain, or La Novicia Rebelde, as it's called in Latin America. It was called Aleluya, Aleluya. Also doesn't have a great cover, but I don't think it's as bad as this one. Maybe it is. I'll go back and look at it and see. Don't own that recording. But this, I found pictures of this production, and it's wackadoodle. I think that it took place in modern times. I'll throw up some pictures there of what this production kind of looked like. But most of the recording wouldn't let you know that. It is all kind of reduced orchestrations. They really futz around with the numbers, futz, F-U-T-Z, around with the numbers. The overture is, I believe, On the Street Where You Live. Sounds pretty standard at the beginning. And then it goes into this like jazzy version of it, and then back to the standard. It has different personalities. And also from what I remember, what is it called? Just You Wait, Henry Higgins, is sung by Henry Higgins. And it is called, I can't remember the name of the song, but he calls her by name. Maria Fuentes is what her name is. She's no longer Eliza Doolittle. Maria Fuentes sounds like a really common name from any Spanish-speaking country, so I don't know where they were going with this one. There are a lot of numbers that are taken out. I don't know, skip this one if you can. If you can find it cheap, or if you're on vacation in Peru, if you find it, it's a great find. Grab Sound of Music while you're at it. But I can't really recommend this, so I would say Vienna recording. The cover does not necessarily reflect the cover of the recording does not reflect the recording itself. The Peruvian one does not reflect the recording itself. How do I want to put this? It's not a good representation of the recording or the physical production, but all of it seemed to be pretty misguided. So do with that what you will. Next up is a recording of a show that I sometimes call a guilty pleasure, but I don't feel so guilty about loving it because I think that the score is actually really great. But it is a pop musical, very much of its time. It's been updated a bajillion times and is currently playing France on a tour, I believe. This is a recording of Starmania. This is the 1986 Joliette, Quebec, Canada recording. How do I want to put this? It is very 1986. The colors, the grid of the squares there, it's all very 1986. The font is very 1986. It just doesn't really tell me anything about the show and is not fun to look at. I don't think this is ever one that is going to be on my wall. And then, we kind of get the shape of a star down at the bottom, but then it looks like a few headlights, but it could be the eyes from Cats, I don't know what it is. I don't know. The back cover is kind of similarly, you get some pictures of the cast, track list and everything. But this cover just didn't do anything for me. I knew I needed to track it down because I was trying to find all of the recordings of Starmania. This is one of those shows that I feel like that has definitely lived up to the further away it gets from the source material, the worse it gets. I think the original was really, really great because it had a great 70s rock sound, and there was some kind of folksy stuff in there, but it was all very kitsch. And I have to say, going back, I'm looking at the covers of right now of the previous Starmania recordings. I don't even know what the original one was. They might be buildings with some light coming through it. You can tell me. I don't know really. The live recording from Paris from 1979. Not a lot happening there, just a gold font on a black cover. And then the Montreal production from 1980 just has Saturn. I know that they kind of leaned into the science fiction part of it a lot more in that recording. I think that is the production where there is an alien that comes back to Earth and has a song that I think only shows up in that production. It might have been on the concept album, but really as far as a dramatic purpose, I think that's the only time it's ever shown up in the show. But that brings us to this one. This was the most offensive to me, although I guess you could say everything from the concept album to this 1986 recording from Joliette, Canada. They're all pretty rough, but this is the one that has the brightest colors and probably most offensive to my senses. That being said, the next production, it's kind of weird because I feel like the quality of the production, I would say the arrangements are kind of what brought the quality down. There was a production from 1988, and this logo is actually the logo that really attracted me to the show, because I was like, wow, this is a really, I need to hear this. And luckily I started with a concept album, and that's where I would recommend anyone that is a Starmania beginner, start with the concept album. You get the main songs, they're all super catchy. And then go from there. The live album is the one that I listen to the most because I think it had an interesting structure back in the day. You get a lot of singers that actually don't even show up on the concept album because their parts were either not written yet or just not included to be considered a highlights album. And then that 80s pop kind of starts to roll in on the 1980 and 1986 recordings from Canada. The first one, I think it was just from Montreal. This is Joliette. And then you get like full tilt pop going into the 1988 recording. So while the covers get better, the quality gets worse. So it's kind of, don't judge this recording by its cover. You get a lot of great singers, but it's only available on vinyl. I transferred it over, but still the sound quality, it just sounds a little hollow to me. And you don't get a lot of actual instruments played by people, so it's a little underwhelming. And the cover is overwhelming. So there you have it. That's the 1986 Joliette cast recording of Starmania. I'm gonna go a little bit out of order because I really do want to save the best for last. I'm already chuckling thinking about it, and I think people that have had conversations with me recently online or have been watching some of my past videos know where I'm going towards. But I'm going to go a little bit out of order alphabetically and go to our next recording, the 1993 London cast recording of Which Witch. Not a show that a lot of people know. I think there's probably a reason that it's kind of just faded away. It's very much of its time. Unlike Starmania, just never really updated itself. And we only got recordings. I think this might have been one of the last. There might have been another like single from Norway. I know there was a single from Denmark, but I just don't think it's a show that made it out of the 90s. Even though we got to 1993, it was made it to the West End. So on the cover of Which Witch from 1993, London cast recording, the reason I think this is one of the worst covers ever is you can only really make out a few things in this photo. I think it's cool that they chose like an action shot of the show. And it just makes you question what you're looking at. I see a skull in the background, a lot of theatrical fog, and it looks like maybe the stage could be falling apart, but I just can't tell. I mean, this doesn't give me anything. And maybe it's one of those things that, they were just looking for a picture to get someone interested in getting the recording. This was not the first cover that I saw that made me kind of interested in Which Witch. That would also go back to 1987 with the original concept album. It is similarly not great, but very much of its time. I'll throw up a picture of that one as well. And then even the 1990, I think, Tunsberg, it's a Norwegian musical, so it started in Norway. It's always been performed in, most always been performed in English. But on the cover of that one, there was a concert in Tunsberg that just has the two authors on the front kind of singing. They got their hands like this. I don't know if that tells you anything about the show. I've listened to it in passing, but it's not one of my favorite shows. Very 80s pop. And it seems to really have taken some kind of note from Phantom of the Opera of taking a time period that's long past and kind of making it pop. I just think they went full tilt pop, and it doesn't seem to have any connection with the I don't want to say source material, but the material itself. This has to do with witch trials. Find it if you can. There might actually be a streaming version somewhere. I bet you can find some clips of it on YouTube to try it out before you actually get the full album. But this album cover has always kind of stuck out in my head as just kind of an eyesore because I don't know what I'm looking at. This kind of goes back to the Lisbon recording of Annie, and that it's that they just didn't choose the right production photo to tell you what the show is really about. Luckily, this one slightly redeems itself in that you have the skull in the background, so it gives you a peek of what the show might be about. But I think this is pretty bad. They chose the wrong picture. And also, probably not the best recording of this show. I would say that the concert recording is live as well. Oh, the leading lady famously had some vocal issues. She's actually performed at the Norwegian Opera before, at the National Opera there. She just she goes about it in a very Sarah Brightman sort of way, if you know what I mean. And she really runs out of steam, I think, in a lot of places in the London recording. And I think that they just really kind of did her dirty on that one, because I know she was under a lot of stress at that point. You know, a Norwegian coming to the West End to do this big musical that she had also had a part in creating. And then the live recording of the night, there's a kind of a high note at the end of one of the songs. And it just doesn't go the way that she wants it to. So my heart goes out to her on that. I would like to hear her sing some other things, but don't start with this recording. Go for the Tunsberg recording. But definitely give it a listen before you throw down any money on it, because it's not my favorite musical ever. And what would a top 10 list be without some honorable mentions? There were some reasons that I didn't add these on the top 10 list, but I just wanted to have more to play with here. So I'm going to throw them out here a little bit quicker than the others. City of Angels, I think both the Broadway recording and the London recording, the drawings that they have, might be evocative of, you know, the time period that that it's taking place, but it almost looks a little bit more like theme park spray painted. What do you call it? I don't remember what it's called, but you know, like you got a theme park, very Orlando. You know, like you have a T-shirt and then they'll like airbrush. There we go, airbrush your name on there and Tweety Bird or something. It looks very much like that. So those have always kind of jumped out at me, and I think that that's a pity, because I think both recordings are really great. I was listening to it the other day while I was mopping the floor, and I was loving it. Godspell Norway. This is actually not from Oslo. It was from Bergen, the second largest city, I believe. And it's just kind of creepy. The mime that they chose is not I'm looking at the Nairobi cast recording right now on my wall. It's not terribly dissimilar from that, but it's kind of strange. Has a very long neck and the head is tilted to one side. But that being said, it's very Godspell. So I can't ding it for that. It's just something that kind of sticks out to me as like, that's kind of weird, but interesting. The other one is a production of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat from Gablitz, Austria. I don't want to ding this one. This is kind of like the Hello Dolly recording, but maybe even more so in that I think that it was an amateur production. Karolina Vasicek, who later went to play the narrator in professional productions. She was the original Belle in Beauty and the Beast in Vienna, and you know, has consistently worked since. She has a very interesting voice that I like a lot. This is when she was a teenager. She played the narrator, and I think this family was. I'm sorry, this production was probably produced by her family. I think her father was the music director, possibly. So I don't want to call her Nepo Baby, because she actually does a good job on this recording and has a lot of talent in later recordings. But the cover's black and white. I don't know why you would have a show called Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat and have a black and white cover. Might have just been a budget thing. So that's probably why you only get a black and white cover for a show that has Technicolor in the title. The next one I have, I've spoken about this one with many friends online, mostly Justin. I compare it to Ghostbusters 2. That is the original, I don't really know what to call it. I think I'd call it the Ferdinand cast recording of Les Mis from 1996, I believe. It's just really interesting that you get these like weird colors of Cosette in the middle and then these like columns on the outside. It looks very creepy. And somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. I've seen a few pictures from this production, and I want to say that the legs were like that in this production. You know, like there was some like forced perspective there. So I guess it's a good representation of the physical production itself. It's only like a short EP. I think it has 5 numbers on it. It's really well produced. I really enjoy it. It has a different sound quality than a lot of other Les Mis recordings. So if you find it, don't let the sound quality, don't let the cover distract you from the sound quality and just the quality of the whole recording. It's actually quite good. This next one I have talked about in the video on Icelandic recordings. This is the Garðabæ cast recording of Rocky Horror Show, also done by an amateur group. Is from a school. I believe it was kind of college level. They just kind of get dinged because it's you get the lips from the movie and then some weird clip art lips, and there's nothing else. I did find out when I was doing the video that I couldn't put too much of the audio on the video because it is currently streaming. It's really interesting that those little productions are now streaming on at least iTunes, but I think it might be on Spotify. And it has, I don't want to say it has a different cover, it just kind of says Rocky Horror. I don't even know if it says show, it says Rocky Horror. Then has a picture of some of the actors there in the middle. Not a great picture, but I don't know why they didn't add some pictures to the liner notes there. The next one I have to say, Seussical. There's a studio, I don't even know if it's technically a studio recording. It's based on the off-Broadway cast. What a lot of people see when they go see newer productions of the show is the version that was recorded, and I'm so happy that that version was recorded because, you know, if you have an amateur group that wants to hear what the show sounds like now, that's the one. So the recording is great. It's just the cover is just not clip arty, but it's just kind of, I just don't think it really looks very great. I think it's kind of computer generated before AI, so I know there was a person involved in it. I just don't think there was much thought or much time necessarily to make that cover. And then finally, the last honorable mention that I have is the original London cast of Starlight Express. I'm very happy when they re-released it. They went back with the original logo with just the train. But the original CD that I had, and I think I've seen it on vinyl this way as well, has the train in the title, and then has this little itty bitty tiny photo of the huge gigantic cast on the front. I don't know, I mean, they could have used a picture of the giant cast, much like the Japanese-Australian tour recording, so you can get an idea of what the show looks like, or not use it at all. But I just think it's really like haphazardly designed, and I think it's really ugly, and I'm glad that they decided to go with the new cover on that one. So let's get to our number one pick. All right, on our last one, you get another twofer. It's actually kind of a 1.5 fur, because I've spoken about the other one before. I've already apologized for not preparing you for that cover. And I thought this was kind of the bottom of the barrel. I thought this, as bad as it gets, is not a great representation of what's on the recording, has no relation to it whatsoever. But I'm talking about the 1982 Danish studio recording of Tell Me on a Sunday. Gitte Henning, the Danish singer who became very popular in Germany as a Schlager singer, recorded the show in 1980, originally just as a concept album in German, after the original London English recording by Marty Webb. Then we got a Swedish recording in the middle, and then in 1982 we got this Danish recording. If you'll go back to that video about Song and Dance, or Song and or Dance, I've got a lot of great things to say about this recording. I think it's probably her best version of it out of the two, just because it's her native language, and it's really great. That being said, what is this cover? It's a show about a Danish girl, and I know it hadn't been a physical production yet, but you know, the story is of a Danish girl that moves to New York, and kind of her love life and the men she meets, and you know, the heartbreak that she goes through while she's in New York. Why is she amongst some really interesting greenery that's very, very short and sticky, and some kind of like stucco wall? And not only that, she is squatting down. And I should have gotten out the vinyl here. I don't know. It looks like she might not be squatting. She might be kind of like cross-legged or something like that, but it looks like she's going to the bathroom, y'all. It's not good. The expression on her face, she just doesn't look happy to be there. I don't know what they were thinking. I wish there was some other picture that they could put. If this ever comes out on CD, please pick a new picture for the front of Tell Me on a Sunday from Denmark, because that is a travesty. As you can tell by my reaction when I did that first video, and I didn't prepare you for it, I thought that was about as bad as it got. But once again, I am very happy with the comments that I've had on these videos, and I did get a comment on the last video that there was a Finnish recording, studio recording from 1985 of Tell Me on a Sunday. And you know, I just had to go out and research it and figure out if I could find it. And so I kind of scoured through Discogs to see if I could find it. And of course, you know, if it has a Finnish title, and I don't speak a word of Finnish, kiitos, I guess, thank you. But I don't speak a word of Finnish other than that one. And so I didn't know really how to search for it. So I actually searched for Andrew Lloyd Webber, and I looked at all of the releases that came out of Finland, and it was one of the last ones that was listed. And I'm trying not to look at this right now, because I want to have an honest reaction, but I see it in my head. Like I said, I was mopping the floor the other day, and I thought about this cover again, and I almost had to remop the floor because I got so tickled when I thought about this cover. Oh my god. I'm so sorry. So here it is, ladies and gentlemen. This is the cover for the 1985 finished studio recording of Tell Me on a Sunday. I have never seen anything like this in my whole life. I think that the title translates as Rules of the Game, which I don't really understand, because it seems like the other titles are kind of fairly well translated. What's even more interesting is that the track that, Tell Me on a Sunday, this is not the title of the track of Tell Me on a Sunday. It actually kind of translates a little bit more directly there. This Rules of the Game is the track that is normally called Sheldon Bloom, which is a person's name. So they already went off the rails here. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I don't ever want to put anyone down. I'm not talking about their physical appearance. When I tell you about the styling, they went for it. They grabbed the horse by the reins and they just went. And they either won or lost the race, depending on what your opinion is. This eyeshadow, talking about things that only existed in that year and that very moment. This kind of two-tone peach going into blue eyeshadow here only existed in 1985. This glossy lipstick is very interesting. You know how they say about mullets that, it's business in the front, party in the back? She has business and party all in the front. She has two different lengths of hair in the front. It's kind of frizzy out to the side, straight down. I don't know, y'all. I don't know. And then she's got the pearl necklace. I don't really know what to say about this thing, but this is the worst album cover that I've ever seen for a cast album or anything theater related. Unfortunately, it really is not from a production. I think that Laura, I can't remember her last name because she's only credited on the front cover as Laura, but she was also the translator. Her last name is, she's credited with her last name there. She was a pop singer with a duo in Finland. So I have not received this yet. I spent way too much money on the shipping of the thing. The disc did not cost that much, but the shipping was a lot, and I didn't even get a tracking number. So let's all hope that it comes to me and that I can not put this thing on my wall. But I cannot wait to listen to it. I hope that the audio experience is better than the visual experience. But for the amount of shit that I've spoken about this cover, I have to say this has literally given me a hour's worth of laughs, and for that I thank you. I don't know that it gets any worse, but if you have any covers that you could think of, please let me know. Well, that's all I got for you today on the worst covers list. I also made a best covers list that will probably be an even longer video, just because I like to focus more on the positive than the negative. But this list kind of gave me a chuckle here of the worst album covers, and this is all in fun and in jest. I hope that I haven't offended anybody by talking about these covers. I know in other videos I might talk about maybe some performances or music quality or whatever it happens to be. I think just as fans of theater, we always kind of critique certain things, with our own opinions, and it just is our own opinion. Being a performer myself, or I was in a past life, I understand what it means to put in so much work into something and maybe the product isn't what you think it is, or they got you on the wrong day or the wrong time in your life, whatever it happens to be. So I don't ever want any criticisms to be taken negatively. This is all in fun. I would like to hope that both Gita and Laura would laugh at these covers, look back and say, look at how much better I look nowadays than I did in that picture. So yeah, that was my little list there. I've got a few more videos coming up. Probably a little bit more, like I said, best covers. I want to do one about packaging, kind of interesting packaging, because this reminds me why I wanted to do this video in the first place, is that you know, of course, when it comes to recording, the sound, you want to hear what the production sounded like and get an idea of the theater of it all, because all of this exists because, you know, it's kind of the beginnings of a theatrical experience. You know, I've spoken about some concept albums in this actual video, or they're a cast recording of a real production. But they're really tools of getting people to go to theater and get interested in a piece and find more recordings of shows. And so I think that the design of a cover, and in a later video I'll talk about the packaging, really is a good tool in bringing somebody into, you know, into the piece. And actually when you go into the store, if you see it online, say, I want to listen to that. That cover is interesting for a good reason or for a bad reason, and I have to listen to the recording itself. So I think that packaging is very important. That being said, as I have said with some of the other recordings, don't let a cover fool you. If the cover's not great, that does not mean that the recording is not going to be great. Sometimes they're completely unrelated. But yeah, thank you for listening to this silly little video about me talking about the worst album covers ever of cast albums. So yeah, if you like this, please like the video, subscribe, and once again, I love it when people comment on these videos. I want to hear about the albums that have covers that really assault your eyes. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Ich liebe das Copyright. 하다못 허가요 소매요 소매 나죠 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 Wiedersehen, es war sehr gut, du kennst mich wohl, auf Wiedersehen, bye bye mein Herr, auf Wiedersehen, bye bye mein Herr. En ik regel voor den Heer wie het zo gaat. I've always been a woman who arranged. Que vi Galileu, belo como Deus. Ein winziges Kabinett, wo mein eigener Ofen steht. Der niemals.
Ya verás, María Fuentes, ya verás. En mis manos pronto te transformarás. Y de larva asquerosa surgir.
On arrive en ville, on arrive de nulle part. On vit sans domicile, on dort dans des hangars. Le jour on est tranquille, pensez que nuit tôt. On change de peau et on frappe au hasard. Voilà.